Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi il-kareem. Wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Ramadan Mubarak. Hope you're doing well. Been battling a cold, not kufi, for like 6 days. So forgive me for my absence, but it was really hard to breathe due to your sinuses being clogged up and sneezing a lot, but alhamdulillah, getting better. So today, I want to talk to you about a topic I've covered with you before, but it's about how many prostitutes use drugs while pregnant, and they lose custody of their kids, and that essentially drugs ruin lives. So you're going to see more and more now leftists from California pushing for the legalization, regulation, and taxation of all drugs. I took a political science class, and, we weren't even talking about that policy. But some libtard in the class brought it up, and I was the only one who spoke out against it. Even the professor didn't agree with me. But none of them have had family members like me who suffered heavily from drug addiction. So there's that. People who haven't experienced having family members heavily addicted to drugs saying that their fantasy theory that they've talked about in their ivory tower is more real than what I've seen on the ground, witnessing and dealing with in my life. So my whole goal is that I just really hope that a lot of sisters resist the temptation of the feminists to use drugs. Because a lot of those feminists, when they become strippers, when they work long shifts at their job using cocaine, Adderall, they really go farther and farther in their concoctions. They mix a lot. They got a Red Bull, an energy drink, they take some pills, they smoke a blunt, they smoke cigarettes. After work, they have a margarita, a martini, or a beer, right? They add and add and add and add. And then that compounding intoxicant type of pressure on their digestive system, on their kidneys, on their liver, really weighs down their spirituality, their mental clarity, their focus, and their mental stability. So when these women who are moving into OnlyFans and then hooking up on Tinder, who start kind of going even further into selling themselves, many of them get addicted to a substance. And when they get pregnant, because even if you're on birth control and a condom, you can still get pregnant. And some of these women, they won't stop using drugs. And it's not so cool then as these atheists, nihilists, edgelords, neckbeards try to push on the population. I've mentioned quite often how many online atheists really romanticize drugs as cool, niche, freeing of one's inhibition. And this is very irresponsible because it gives you a very narrow perspective on what drugs do to the human psyche. And Joe Rogan constantly promoting drugs and using drugs to the youth. This is something that is becoming more and more of a fitna for us. And sobriety is becoming underrated. And people are chasing ways to alter their consciousness in order to deal with their reality instead of solving the things in their reality that can make their life better that they don't need to escape from. And sex workers who do this, they end up losing it all. They follow these feminists who online, on TikTok, promote these degenerate lifestyles. The social media liberals will censor anyone who tells people not to act like Cardi B. And then when these girls lose their friends, they've aborted a baby, once, and then they get pregnant again, and then they're addicted to drugs. They're all screwed up. Mentally, spiritually, they're just all over the place. And then the fashion lifestyle that these rappers have promoted, these pop stars have promoted, these heavy metal musicians, and these online feminists, well, these prostitutes come to the realization that it's not so glamorous. And once they've done a certain track records of deeds, certain track records of pretty gross acts, and it gets out in public, it's hard for them to be rescued. It's hard for them to get a good husband and to change. And they end up going on social benefits or just staying homeless. They go homeless and they just stay that way. And they use drugs until their teeth fall out, till their skin becomes eroded, and they perish alone and die in an alley behind a dumpster. And the atheists, the liberals, and the feminists promote this. They push it because they mock Islam for saying no to intoxicants. They fetishize party culture, hookup culture, and promote it as sexual liberation and empowering. And they don't show you what's under the rock. And then they censor everyone who warns the young girls that your beauty fades, and it fades even faster with meth. If you want, go look at before meth and after meth pictures. Okay? And meth is easily available, extremely powerful, and it makes you very violent, highly addictive, hallucinogenic. And the more that San Francisco and California create safe injection sites, safe smoke sites, the more people will have permanent chemical imbalances in their brains, and the more the state can't help these people. A lot of liberals think that the government is always going to be able to save people. And then you get into more of the conservative realm that says, well, that's the duty of the churches, the masjids, the synagogues. The government is about taxation, infrastructure. They're not there to be your mom and dad. And that you're supposed to have family and community. But liberals are changing into be sort of communists and socialists, and they want the government all up on you. But that philosophy of making the government heavily involved in the people's lives does not mean that the drug users who they're enabling are going to have access to people who are going to help them to not use drugs. So I hope you got my point there. They're pushing drugs, creating safe drug sites. Safe. Making someone smoke more, inject more heroin, and the permanent side effects stay there. Okay? They stay there. And so it makes it harder for that person to break away. Because now they know they got a spot where they can always go. And they say it helps to save lives. But you're really helping someone to crush themselves. If someone takes a knife and harms their arms, and you give them a knife and a safe place to do it, how is that really helping them? Cold, hard, brutal truths work a lot better. And if you talk to these addicts, what do they say they suffer from? I didn't have a mom. I didn't have a dad. I was selling my body and I got abused. Right? They talk about these abuses. They talk about broken families. But then, when people like me talk about present mothers, gender roles, men matter, fathers matter, these same feminist liberal atheists will call you primal, barbaric, backwards, dangerous even. They'll try to ban you. Meanwhile, they pretend to be sympathetic to these people who are using drugs, and then when these drug users say why they're using drugs, and a lot of it deals with broken families, right? Their solution isn't let's maintain the family, it's let's create more taxes and have a nanny state where the government takes care of everybody. Which just isn't going to work. Because that's not the government's function, and a stranger in a suit is not going to replace a good father, a good mother, a good neighbor, right? So, hopefully, more of us can help those women to stop selling their bodies and to stop using drugs. And if you have friends who are listening to these atheists about how cool drugs are, how cool alcoholism is, enlighten them in the best way you can. And sometimes you can even show them, what does the liver look like before alcoholism and after, right? When my mom was recovering from addiction, one of the rehabs was close to a cemetery, and they used to make the addicts walk through the cemetery. My mom says it really shook her up. She still did use drugs after that, but she said it had an impact on her. So some of these drugs that these liberals are pushing, they are soul snatching. They stay with that person forever to the day they die. That craving is always in them. Once you let it in, it can't come out. So avoid it as best you can. May Allah guide us all. Keep us safe.